This is Shane Harder from Seeking Unemployment. This is the real estate investment show where we learn how to become gainfully unemployed together. Now, today is part 8 in a larger series where I ask a whole bunch of different investors from all over the country in different experience levels, different asset classes, all of that kind of thing, how they're handling the exact same issue. So today's issue we're talking about is paid mentorships. Now, this can be a little bit of a hot topic because some mentorship groups, specifically the larger ones where it's a big conference hall and they pressure you into doing things, handing over large sums of money, have gotten a really bad reputation through the industry. And so it's also kind of tarnished other paid mentorships that are a lot on a much smaller scale, where it might be one investor taking on one or two students, teaching them how they've done it. And so I really wanted to know how people felt about it, given that it has a bad reputation from a lot of people, but is it still a good, viable option to learn from another investor? So let's find out how they believe in this.
I have done a few joint venture deals with some people. I guess I wouldn't really call him a business partner, but I've had a couple situations where I thought it was a good situation getting into it, and as time went along, we discovered that maybe we weren't such a good fit for each other. And luckily it did not turn sour or anything like that. I'm 100% open to working with people. I have investors that will call me and say, so I have a couple out of the country. So I work with investors from South Africa, I have a couple of them in Israel.
Wow.
And they'll basically reach out to me and say, hey, I've heard a lot of things about the Indianapolis market. I want to get involved in the Indianapolis market. I don't have time to put into building my own team. Can we work together? And so basically in that situation, I'll leverage my team. And so, my thing is, hey, look, I've got everything set up from beginning to end, from all the way from the acquisitions team, all the way to putting in property management, if it's a buy and hold situation that you're looking for. So they'll basically, on a flip property, they will be the money person. They'll come in with all their funding. They'll purchase the property. They're the ones who will be on title. I will bring in my team for the acquisition, for the rehab, and for the disposition, and we will end up splitting the net proceeds at the end. And so I guess that's a partnership. It's a joint venture partnership. Yeah. And so I do those all the time, and people really like it because they don't have to put the time and effort into building a team, one, and two, they probably don't have the risk involved that they would if they were just starting on their own.
Definitely
right?
Not.
So
yeah.
one of my things is I can never, and time, yeah. Right. So I can never guarantee that there is no risk because it's an investment. Of course, there's always a risk, but with the systems and the team that I have in place, we can severely limit the risks because of all of my contractors are vetted. From my inspection guy to my foundation guy to my contractor to my agents I've been ripped off by bad agents. I've been ripped off by bad inspectors. I've been ripped off by bad contractors, certainly. And so, there's bad people in every profession. And so, I can help them limit their exposure to risk by putting my team in place. So it works out really good.
Well, when we started out, and for years, we didn't have any money. I mean, we started buying real estate, and eventually we became, millionaires on paper, but we still didn't have much cash because it was all tied up in our real estate. So from the day one, we didn't have money, so we had to find partners that had money. And so I think it actually worked in our favor because, by the time we we did a $50 million purchase last year, and or actually end of 2018, and we raised $20 million for that deal. And
Jeez.
by that time, you know, we'd been raising money for like 12 years. And so, yeah, I think that's critical. It's critical to have partnerships. A lot of people don't, and they just buy the money on their own, and that, or buy the deals on their own, and that's fine too. But you can go a lot further with partnerships, not just with money, but, you know, my brothers and I founded Worcester Investments, and we had a great run for 13 years. And I think we all would have been, we were better off as three than we would have done on our own, independently on our own.
It's a team sport, and you can't pull off big real estate apartment deals without a team. And by team, I mean, there's two ways of looking at partnership. One is like a permanent partnership, where like I have with my business partner, Carl, where we do every deal together. And then there's partnerships where you bring in a investor for an individual deal, or you bring in a sponsor for an individual deal, or other partners. And that's the partnership that I recommend. I actually probably would not recommend having a ongoing partnership, mainly because they are very complex. They're risky because things can go wrong very easily, and break up the partnership. And then you're in a nasty situation often. It can ruin friendships. And for them to work out is to me is almost miraculous. Now, Carl and I we've been working together for 20 years.
Yeah.
And we just know how to make it work. We know how to help each other, and we know how to keep things at a very high level. But I would say partner on deals, don't partner on your company unless it's just a very exceptional situation.
So I have had some wonderful partnerships. I've had some not so great partnerships.
Just don't mention their names, and then we're clear.
There you go. Yeah. Change the names to protect the innocent.
There you go.
And so, you know, overall, I don't have a problem with partnerships. A couple of things. One is, if you're going into a long-term partnership where you are going to be partners on pretty much everything you do for years to come and all that kind of stuff, you would just better make sure that partner, that you trust them with your life nearly, because at least your financial life is tied in their hands. And honestly, if they were to break the law, maybe even your real life is tied to them. I've fortunately not had that happen, but I did have one partner one time that had a little bit of a personal issue. At the time, they went through a bad breakup and just kind of, you know, barricaded themselves from the world, and it really hurt our company to the tune of a couple of $100,000. We lost some deals and stuff. I won't get into the details, but it hurt financially. And once I found out about that, there was really nothing I could do about it, because he had every bit the right to sign contracts and get us in or out of obligations and things like that as I did. And so he did a lot of that while I was away for a couple of weeks attending some family issues, and had a death in the family. And so while I was doing that, he was basically taking us out of some contracts that cost us a lot of money. Anyway, so you better trust that long-term partner. Since that time, I really haven't had any long-term partners other than my brother. I do enter into a lot of long-term stuff with him, but I figure if your brother screws you over, then, you know,
you got bigger problems.
Right? What's that?
If it's your brother, then you got bigger problems than just money.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know, and besides your brother, you can just duke it out, you know, like you just,
that's right.
And you're still going to be brothers, and still, yeah.
You got it. Short-term partnerships, I tend to be okay with, because typically it's either one project or, fairly short time related timeline. And so I'm okay with shorter partnerships because there's typically defined parameters for either that deal or that term or whatever. And so I work fairly well in short-term partnerships. Long-term partnerships, I'm just not a big fan of anymore.
Every time that I've done a partnership agreement, one of the things that that I've done that a lot of people don't usually think of is I always make sure near the end there are terms on under how that relationship ends, even if it's not just like already set in stone that this is just for this deal. Maybe it's just a business venture, and you say, hey, if we get to a point where we disagree, this is how things are going to be divided up. This is how we break it up. And it's a little bit of a bummer to do stuff like that because you're both so excited about a new venture starting up. And that's why most people forget to do that part. But you have to remember that almost all these things are going to dissolve at some point. And so it smooths out the entire process so much and takes all the emotion out of it. If you have all those terms laid out and one partner goes to the other and says, hey, I think I'm going to go move to another state and I think we should dissolve this. And by the way, I want this much of the company because I feel I contributed this much. And then you could say, well, let's go look at the terms that we agreed to originally. And then you just follow a set of rules that you had already set up when you weren't emotional about it. It's so much better. It saves the relationship. It's great.
Yeah, I guess I should have touched on this when you asked me how did I grow. Part of the reason I was able to grow so fast was somewhere along the lines of my fifth or sixth deal, my business partner ended up being a guy that bought previous deals off me. And so he saw value in me in that I was good at finding deals. I saw value in him in that he was great at, he has a construction background. He understands the work it takes to get a property to where it needs to be and how much that costs, right? And so we were already like forming a team before we had a partnership because I would find a deal, I would call him and say, hey, I got this potentially good deal. You may want to take a look at it. He would come look at it. He'd say, hey, it probably needs ABC 1, 2, 3 work. It'll cost about this much, right? And then he would buy the deal, right? And so he approached me one day and said, hey, we're good friends. I think we have similar thoughts as to how we want, how investing is going to play a role in our lives and the kinds of properties we want to take down. We should talk about partnering up. And so after about my fifth or sixth deal, I partnered up with him, and one person doing this can do so much. Two people doing it can do 3 or 4 times as much. And so I went from sending about 1,000 pieces of mail a month on my own to when working with him, we got up to almost 8,000 pieces of mail a month between him and I. So we were able to work a lot faster. And then you can grow faster too, because now if we're going to buy a single family home, right, and we got to come up with a down payment, I only got to come up with half now. So I can buy twice as many homes with the money I have.
That's great. Wow. So you added a real capital partner there.
Yeah. I mean, we were 50-50 everything all the way around, right? So, we split marketing costs, we split, down payments, we split everything down the middle, we split profits down the middle. But like I said, I could buy, 2 properties with him to 1 on my own, right?
Sure. And so with that, he's a partner in your business and not necessarily a partner in specific deals, because those are the 2 big ways that people do it, obviously, in real estate.
Right. So we started our own LLC together, right? And we do our own marketing in that LLC together. Cool. And so if I get a lead that comes from the marketing that we do together, we split that lead. If I get a lead that comes from marketing that I do on my own, I keep that for myself.
Okay, cool. And then, so it sounds like your role is more in this business partnership is finding deals, and his role is more or less funding deals. Is that right? Or is it?
No.
It's a little bit more
That's
50-50 on each thing.
yeah. So that's how we met. Was I was finding deals, and then he was helping me with them. But when we formed the partnership, it was all 50-50. We both paid for marketing. We split the marketing up, so that he was getting 50% of the phone calls and I was getting 50% of the phone calls. We'd either separately go look at the places and make offers, or do it together. Just depends on what our schedules were. And then we would plan out the rehabs and all that together. So it was all 50-50.
Okay, cool. Neat. So your opinion sounds like pretty positive. Sounds like it's been a pretty great thing for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think you got to be careful, right? Like, I think he and I agreed on the important things, right? And if you agree on the important things, it makes the little decisions easier, right? We both want to be buy and hold investors first and foremost. Like, that's our goal, right? Is wealth, not quick money, right?
Sure.
And so we both are big on integrity and taking care of people, and just doing the right thing and rehabbing homes the right way all the way around, right? And so I think if you're on the same page about the major things, it makes the little things easy. If you're not on the same page, like if one of you wants to flip houses and one of you wants to buy rentals, you're going to be in an argument every time you get a good lead, right?
Yeah.
Because one of you is going to want to take the quick money and one of you is going to want to take the wealth.
Yeah, I think partnerships are fine. I just think in the real estate, partnerships can be fine. I think that if you're of an entrepreneurship mindset, it can be difficult to work with partners who are also entrepreneur mindset. Like, it's just, I don't know. Partnerships are difficult. They can be really hard, even if you work together really well. Like, just communication's difficult. Like, being on the same, always having the same interests or the same goals, what you value. You're sharing so many of these these concepts of value and stuff like that with another person that you don't think about until you're intimately involved with them in a partnership, and you start really realizing that you're not always going to have the same views, and that can get in the way of moving forward sometimes. So I don't love partnerships when it comes to like owning a business as a whole, but I do think entering into partnerships on specific projects is great.
Yeah.
Enter into projects on, hey, let me put a team together for this house or this property or this group of properties. But you're segregating it into, hey, we all have the same idea of what we could accomplish with these several houses or this house. Let's do that together. Not, let's grow this business together. Well, what do you want that business to be might change next year, the year after. What you value might change. What you need money for might change. But with something like a house, well, you have all that stuff ironed out in detail in your contract. We know what our exit strategy is going to be. We already know what the equity split's going to be. We know when we look at refinance and offer exits.
I think also the duties, when you have all the duties that each person is in charge of or responsible for, is a pretty critical part of a relationship in any kind of partnership agreement.
Yeah. So where I cut it off is when you're talking about reinvestment of funds. So I will enter into a contract with somebody else on another house where everything is clear, all things have been discussed, and all money is paid back to us, and we know when we're getting paid. As soon as you want to reinvest that money for anything outside the reinvestment schedule on putting back in for capital expenditures, or putting into the pot for additional problems, potentials, things like that, like those reinvestments we're talking about are just part of your typical pro forma. I'm talking about reinvesting into another property.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Rolling this into something else. Okay, now we're talking about
a different
growing
deal.
As a business. We're talking about a business. I don't like business partnerships.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, in real estate, partnerships can work really well. It's pretty common for one person to be the money partner and the other person to be the, go get everything done partner. And so that's one of the things that's really cool about real estate is it lends itself to those kinds of arrangements that are very, very simple. And it also shows,
very cut and dry.
cut and dry. And
Emotionless.
and I also think that pretty much, this is my personal opinion on it, that any partnership, your best partnerships are not, the biggest mistake people make is that they find somebody else that has the exact same skill set and the same passions, and they're just both excited about the same thing.
Yeah.
And they go into a partnership together, when what you should really be finding is somebody that's passionate about the same thing, but they have two different skill sets. So the skill sets can come together and create a stronger unit instead of two people that are the same that are just going to clash over what they want to do the whole time. So
partnerships can be really good or really bad. I mean, when you get into a partnership, I mean, it's just like a marriage, right? And so you have to do your homework before you sign that contract. But absolutely, partnerships and joint ventures, they can be great as well. So once again, it's all about due diligence. You've got to make sure that your partner and you are both bringing stuff to the table that are complementary, that you're able to work together. I recommend starting off on something small. Don't do don't sign a contract saying you're going to do the next 10 years together. Start with, maybe if you're flipping homes, do one flip together, and then write a contract for just that one joint venture. And then after you've done it, if you guys are still friendly and everything's great, and you feel like you've added value to each other, then continue to do it. But yeah, definitely be careful. Some of my biggest, most costliest mistakes have been because of bad partnerships, and some of my biggest paychecks are as a result of good partnerships. So I wouldn't say yay or nay, but I'd say start small, date first, and work your way up to the bigger things as time goes on. And but yeah, I mean, if somebody, a lot of times when you're first starting out, a lot of times somebody's going to be the money partner, and somebody's going to be the work guy. And whichever side you're on, make sure, once again, you do the things that you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to have X amount of dollars available, make sure you got that available. If you say you're going to do all the work, don't be mad at your partner if they don't contribute to the work. So be very specific in your partnership agreement or joint venture agreement as to who's doing what, who's got what responsibility, who's got the financial, who's putting in what financially, and also what you do after exit. And then I always like to put something in there if things don't go to plan. Let's say your goal was to flip a property, and then suddenly COVID hits, and there's no, you fix up the property, and now the value's gone down, and flipping it means you're going to take a loss. What's plan B look like? Maybe plan B is, okay, we're going to hold it and rent it until it's worth a certain amount, or until we both agree that we're going to sell it. So I always like to have a plan B, because a lot of times when everybody's excited to get into business together, just like that honeymoon phase in a relationship, you're all excited, everything's just great. And then when things start to go wrong, those conversations take a different turn, and people turn on each other, and one person says, oh, well, remember you said that? And nobody remembers the conversations anymore. So put everything in writing, be very specific, and also have a plan B.
All right, guys, that wraps up this video. If you'd like to connect with us and partner on some multifamily deals, click on the link below, and we can send you all the info on how to get started there. If you'd like to check out the videos from the beginning of this playlist, click on this link right here. To check out the link that Google wants you to watch, click on this link right here. And lastly, if you want to make sure you see the future videos that we'll be posting in the same series, click on this subscribe link right here. You'll be all set to go. Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.